To get even more expert opinion on all of this, let's go to jury expert Dave Zehner, who is joining us right now. Dave, thank you so much for being with us.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Let's get right into it. You know, some people were thinking that these deliberations would carry on much longer than they did. This was a pretty quick verdict. What do you make of that from the jury's perspective?
Yeah, this is very similar to the Van Dyke trial we had here in Chicago, where the jury was basically, I think we'll find out through interviews when we're allowed to talk to the jurors, that basically they had a meeting of the minds and they went through slowly, took their time, which is why it was 11 hours. But I doubt that we're going to find there was much dissension on most of the counts and most of the decisions that had to be made.
A lot of things they had to sort through, though, in terms of those counts that were stacked up against former police officer Derek Chauvin. 3 charges against him, second-degree and also third-degree murder and second-degree manslaughter, guilty on every single charge. How does the jury look at those charges and make a decision?
Yeah, these charges were especially confusing because one of the charges, the second-degree murder charge, they did not have to find if there was intent to murder, but intent to commit assault, and finding that was enough to then make the claim. So what jurors usually do is they do pay attention to what the instructions are, they listen to what happens in the closings, and they generally reach they try and talk it out before they have their first vote. So they work through what the issues are, what possible confusion there might be or disagreements there might be, and then they can start getting to the point where they make their votes and make their decisions. So my guess is that this jury made their decisions fairly early, went over all the possible reasons against it before announcing their final verdict today.
You know, I was reading something, Dave, just on yesterday, and it said that 80% of times jury members, you know, once those opening statements come out, they know exactly how they plan to see the case. Have you seen that just from your perspective as an expert on juries?
Yes, that's almost always what happens. Jurors have what is called a schema, which is a series of information that they have in their brain that they filter the evidence from a trial through. And what happens is after the opening statements, they make a decision about what schema or what information that they already know comes into play. And they filter that information, that the evidence is, through that information to reach their decision. And normally they don't even realize it, but they've already made a decision after openings. And then the rest of the time they're gathering information to support that decision. So the information that they hear and they process is the information that supported kind of the initial lean that they had early on.
Dave, we're watching a lot of video from across the country where people are celebrating, but the reality is a lot of people are happy about these charges, but some people felt like Derek Chauvin was not guilty. What happens now to make sure those members of the jury are protected?
You mentioned a lot of cheers.
Well, the judge has already kept their names confidential. And he is going to hold those names confidential until he feels comfortable that their safety can be guaranteed. So it'll be the judge's decision about when to release the names. And my guess is he's going to wait several weeks, maybe even until after he has made some decisions about sentencing.
Let's talk about the makeup of the jury, because a lot of people thought this was a pretty diverse pool of people. 2 white men, 4 white women, 2 women described to be mixed race, 3 black men, and 1 black woman. Can you talk about how important it was to have a diverse pool of jury members on this case?
Yes, you can tell that was definitely something that the prosecution was looking for when making their decisions. As you look through the jury selection process, you could look at who each side was excluding with what's called their preemptory strikes. And as you kind of mentioned, the decision was made kind of from both sides that they wanted to make sure that there was a representative group. The way that the jury panel worked out, they were able to exclude people who had really strong opinions already formed. And then the group that was left were people who said, I can keep an open mind about this decision-making process. And it ended up being a jury that was fairly representative of Hennepin County.
Dave, I know you said that this was a pretty quick verdict, and just about everyone across the country has said the exact same thing. Roughly 11 hours, this jury deliberated. Have you seen anything like that when you look at history, any precedent set on any other high-profile cases of this magnitude where the jury has come back so quickly with their decision?
Yeah, it's interesting because most of the time the conventional wisdom is that a very quick verdict is helpful for the defense. O.J. Simpson case being the most famous example. That jury came back in 2 hours. However, 11 hours is a reasonable amount of time. They debated over 2 days. As I mentioned before, the Van Dyke verdict was after 8 hours. So I think when it came out over 11 hours, for it to be a defense verdict, I think he would have expected it to take a little bit longer. So when it came out that the verdict was now at 11 hours, that was about the time it would take for jurors to kind of agree on guilty verdicts for everyone. And I think a not guilty verdict or a hung jury would have taken a lot longer. If it had stretched out to 4, 5, 6 days, then you could have seen maybe a split verdict or a not guilty verdict. The fact that it was a relatively quick verdict is consistent with what we've seen in other fairly high-profile cases.
When we watched Judge Peter Cahill give the instructions to the jury, it was very obvious that he wanted to make sure that every single one of them checked their biases at the door. We all have biases. He made that very prominent in his statements to the jury. When they went into that room to deliberate on day one, and then they went back this morning to deliberate, what type of things do you think were talked about in that room? And at any point, did they ask any questions or get stuck on any of those charges, to your knowledge?
Not to my knowledge, they did not ask any questions, which is one of the most surprising things there. Usually in cases like this, when there's multiple charges and there could be some complicated questions, you would expect a jury that is having any difficulty in reaching a decision to make questions to the judge or to ask for certain evidence to be read back. But they didn't do that, which means that's one of the reasons I'm pretty confident this was a fairly cohesive jury that didn't really have much dispute and worked through the evidence methodically, but didn't really hit any major hiccups in their decision making.
All right, Dave Zehner, a jury expert, thank you so much for joining us with your expertise here on First at 4.